The chandeliers sparkled like falling stars above the grand restaurant hall, where laughter and the soft clinking of glasses mixed with the aroma of fine wine and fresh roses. Yet amid all the elegance, a young woman stood frozen near table 9, her trembling hands clutching a notepad, her heart pounding so loud she could almost hear it echo. That was Emma, the new waitress on her first day, staring straight at them, and everyone in the room seemed to whisper about the Millionaire CEO. The man about to close a $200 million deal that would change everything for his company. But within seconds, she was about to say the one sentence that would shake his world, and her own. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing what's right even when it's hard, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Let's spread stories that remind us how humanity still matters. Emma had been job hunting for weeks after losing her previous position when the small diner she worked at shut down. Her mother's health bills were piling up, her younger brother's tuition was due, and every morning she would whisper to herself that something good had to come soon. When she got a chance at La Belle Maison, the city's most luxurious restaurant, it felt like a miracle. But miracles often come wrapped in moments of deep testing. From the moment she walked into the restaurant that afternoon, she was overwhelmed by its golden lights, mirrored walls, and polished floors. The staff moved like a symphony, elegant, precise, flawless. But Emma, still learning the steps, stumbled through her first orders, her nervousness showing in every smile. The manager's warning echoed in her mind, one mistake tonight and you're out. This isn't just a restaurant, it's reputation. At table 9 sat Richard Hale, a name every business magazine knew. His company had built empires, his decisions had made or broken fortunes. People called him a visionary, others called him ruthless. Today, he was here to celebrate what might become his biggest success, a $200 million merger signing over lunch. He was sharply dressed, every movement controlled, every word deliberate. Around him sat other executives, lawyers, and a few reporters waiting to document his next triumph. Emma approached cautiously with a tray of sparkling water and hors d'oeuvres. But as she leaned forward, her eyes caught something, a small, folded piece of paper on the floor beneath Richard's chair. At first, she ignored it. Yet something about the corner of that paper drew her attention. It had the logo of a children's foundation she recognized. The same one her late father used to volunteer for before his accident. Her father had always believed kindness wasn't weakness, it was courage in disguise. Curious, Emma discreetly picked up the paper as she adjusted a napkin. What she saw made her stomach twist. It wasn't a charity note, it was a private memo. It outlined how Richard's deal would secretly shut down multiple community programs funded by the company he was buying. Thousands of families, low-income workers, and children would lose support within months, all hidden behind complex corporate language. It wasn't just a business deal, it was devastation for people who depended on those funds. For a long second, she froze. Her fingers trembled as she looked back at Richard, who was smiling confidently, shaking hands, unaware she'd seen the memo. Her mind raced, she was just a waitress. Who was she to say anything? If she spoke up, she'd lose her job. But if she stayed silent, hundreds might suffer. Her heart burned with conflict. The restaurant buzzed with chatter and champagne. Reporters adjusted their cameras. The deal was minutes away. Emma stepped back, whispering silent prayers, her father's voice echoing in memory, right is right, even if you stand alone. And then she made the decision that would change her life forever. As Richard reached for his pen to sign the contract, Emma walked forward. The room seemed to hold its breath. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. She placed the memo gently on the table and said the words that froze the air around them, "Sir, you need to leave." At first, silence. Then confusion. A few executives turned to her, annoyed. Richard looked up, eyebrows furrowed. He assumed she must have made a mistake. But before he could speak, Emma continued, her voice gaining quiet strength. She told him what she'd found, the truth behind the deal, how it would destroy lives for profit. The room fell utterly still. Every pair of eyes was on her, the nervous new waitress confronting a millionaire in a hall full of power. The manager rushed forward, ready to drag her away, but Richard raised his hand. Something in her tone, the sincerity in her trembling voice, stopped him. She wasn't angry, she wasn't accusing. She was pleading, not for herself, but for the people who couldn't speak. For a long moment, Richard just stared at her. No one dared breathe. Then, slowly, he asked to see the memo. His expression changed. The documents were indeed part of the deal, something one of his executives had quietly inserted without his full knowledge, masking it in corporate jargon. The realization hit him like a storm. Richard excused himself, stood up, and walked out of the restaurant with Emma following at a distance, unsure whether she'd just saved people or destroyed her future. Outside, he leaned against the marble railing, silent. He asked her how she knew about the foundation. Emma explained about her father, about the values he taught her, that kindness and honesty were the only real measures of success. Minutes passed before Richard finally spoke. He told her he had once believed the same but had lost sight of it chasing power. Her courage had reminded him of something he thought he'd forgotten. He tore the contract in half and walked back inside. The crowd gasped as he announced he was halting the deal until the ethical concerns were resolved. Cameras flashed, journalists whispered, and the manager stood speechless. Emma stood near the doorway, tears burning her eyes. She expected to be fired, maybe even sued. Instead, Richard approached her and said quietly, "You just saved me from making the worst mistake of my life." He thanked her publicly, shocking everyone, and announced a new partnership, one dedicated to supporting the same communities that would have been lost. The next morning, Emma's story was everywhere. Waitress stops $200 million deal to save lives. News outlets called her the girl with the golden heart. Job offers came flooding in, but she turned them down. Richard's company offered her a role in their charity division, not out of pity, but respect. Life didn't turn perfect overnight, but something inside Emma had changed. She no longer doubted her worth or her voice. She had learned that courage wasn't loud, sometimes it was the quiet voice that whispered, "Do what's right." Weeks later, the foundation Emma's father once loved received record funding from Richard's company. Schools reopened, families got help, and the world quietly shifted, all because one young woman dared to stand up for kindness. And Richard? He became not just a richer man, but a better one. At every corporate event afterward, he told this story, how a waitress reminded him that no deal, no success, no amount of money could ever outweigh the cost of losing humanity. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Let's keep spreading stories that remind us kindness is still powerful in a world that often forgets. And before we end, I have a small request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness still exists," if you believe one small act of courage can truly change lives. Because sometimes, it takes just one brave heart, like Emma's, to remind the world what truly matters. Real stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what's the kindest thing a stranger ever did for you? Because sometimes, it only takes one act of kindness to change a life forever.